You've spent an entire career fighting fires and rescuing the injured, sick, and dying. But that's all over now. What do you do when the sirens stop, you've hung up your gear, and you walk out of the firehouse for the last time? What do you do with your life when the smoke clears?
Welcome back to the When the Smoke Clears podcast. I'm Russell Miles. I'm here with Tony Bencosme. Thank you all again for listening, wherever you're listening, whether that's on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. We really appreciate it. And for those of you that have listened and have supported the show, what would help us out a lot is if you leave us a rating. We love 5-star ratings, of course, but any rating helps to boost the pod so that more people can find it and discover it and hear the stories that we have to share. So again, thank you all for listening, and please rate us whenever you get a chance. And so now Tony's going to tell us about who we've got on the pod today.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank everybody for listening, and I appreciate your support. Our next guest, someone that I've known a good little bit, was influential to me and a lot of other firefighters, and he's been retired for a little bit. He retired as a battalion chief with 21 years of service, was a member of the FEMA Maryland Task Force 1 team, was part of the incident support team for Montgomery County, was implemental in putting together the CPAT physical agility testing program that we have. It's across the country now. It's used in most jurisdictions as a way of testing candidates to see if they can become a firefighter. He was also very important and part of the process in getting the IPE, which is in Montgomery County. It was the incumbent performance evaluation, basically a test of our firefighters in the service to make sure they're up to snuff and they can physically still do their job. And he was the administrative services executive officer. So he's done a multitude of things in his 21 years of service as in Montgomery County. And with further ado, I want to welcome our next guest, Bill Kang, retired Battalion Chief Bill Kang. Thanks for coming, brother.
Woohoo! Great to see you guys, man. Always good to be around it's always good be around the alumni. Thank you for having me.
No problem, man. Thanks for taking time to share your story with us, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, we really appreciate it. So as you know, I think you said you've listened to the pod, and we appreciate that. And so we always start with the origin story of our guests. So please tell us a little bit about where you were born and how you came up.
Yeah, I mean, my family, they immigrated to the United States primarily for education. So in essence, I was first generation American. So I was born in DC at Georgetown University Hospital. My father was, of all things, an English professor at Howard University, and my mother was a nurse anesthetist at DC General Hospital. I know when Kelvin Thomas said that he was born there, I thought, oh yeah, my mom worked there.
Oh,
And
good.
it's kind of interesting because like when I have to go to surgery and stuff, and they mention my mom was a nurse anesthetist there, it says, she was pretty hardcore. So we lived in various places, some in Prince George's County when I was, a little baby. The earliest I can remember is like living in Northwest DC on 32nd Street in Northwest. And then eventually when I started grade school, we were living in 26's area in near Montgomery Mall. So yeah, that's where I grew up there. And, that's where I started to get a love for the fire service because, there was nothing special. My parents did not give me a fire hat when I was a little kid or anything like that. I didn't have any family that was associated with the fire department. But, I used to see back then engine 221 go by and say, man, that's really cool. And, guys are riding a back step and, it just looked really cool. So, life keeps on progressing. We moved to Chevy Chase, and I lived on Connecticut Avenue across from 4-H Center. which, by the way, I think I lived roughly a block away from Pete Corte, and he becomes central to this because our paths cross through life anyway. But that's when, when I was a kid, the Bethesda Rescue Squad, the BCC Rescue Squad, used to go and do door-to-door solicitations for fundraising, and they would always leave the little pamphlet. And I would, I'd be 11-year-old kid looking at the pamphlet, and just look at the fleet picture for hours, and waited for the next one to come next year. And I lived on Connecticut Avenue, so I used to see the guys from Station 7 come screaming down the road. And back then they had the open cab Persh. And, it wasn't unusual to see Joe Rising standing up, holding on to the windshield, yelling at the cars in front of him. And I just thought that was really cool. And that's, my upbringing wise, both my parents, obviously worked, and at a certain point, my mom was sort of done working at DC General, and my parents opened an art gallery with custom framing just inside the DC line on Connecticut Avenue. So we lived relatively close to the gallery, but it was a mom and pop shop, so they were gone, Monday to Saturday. So, and I was an only child, so I was basically a latchkey kid.
Latchkey kid, absolutely.
Yeah. I was left to my own devices, and it was my own devices to everything. So I had to, get myself to school, make sure I did my homework and all of that stuff. And, which was good and bad, only kids. So there was, some loneliness issues, but, we had a good neighborhood. And I was a very, very shy, timid kid. And
wow.
Very, very shy and timid. And, was pretty much afraid of branching out and reaching out and doing anything. And, but for some reason, I was still attached to watching the fire trucks go by, and to a lesser degree, the police cars. But that's okay. But every once in a while, I used to go by Station 7, and it was a cool place. This is back in the days where you had guys like Dickie Mullins, Billy Blackwell, Yogi Heon, Bull Wilt, and of course, Boogie, Tony Veith.
Tony Veith,
yeah. And, Bob Steffen and those guys, Chief Dennis McLaughlin. It was, for me, that was my hometown firehouse. That's how it was. So fast forward, so I'm in high school and stuff like that. And of all people, so Clark Oliver. So we're hanging out one day because we also went to high school together, and we went by the Bethesda Rescue Squad, and I think he was looking into becoming a member, and I just sort of went along. Again, remember, I'm a very timid, shy kid. And long story short, I think his parents did not allow him to become a member. Me, I just went home, and I don't know what it was. I was like, I think I'm going to do this, So, for my son out there, don't listen to this part, but I forged my parents' signature and went over and submitted my application. Okay.
Yeah, creative.
Creative, whatever. But anyway, and that was it. And I was me and this other kid were the first junior members of the rescue squad back in the day. And, I loved every second of it. I was 16 years old. Back then they had summer classes. So in 3 weeks you could get your EMT. So, and, the first summer, off, I had first I got my EMT, I got my firefighter one, and I was, to a large degree, I was hooked. There was some consternation. I don't think my parents figured out how I got into the fire department, but they, obviously I was there. They had no idea, I said, I need to be driven to this place in Rockville, and I was being driven to the fire, the training academy for class.
Oh, wow.
So, and my parents were traditional Asian family. The expectation is that I was going to go to college, and it was very specific, a lawyer or doctor. Okay, engineer was not good enough. So there was a high expectation of what they wanted out of my life. But so fast forward, it's the next school year, so it's going into like my senior year. And I decided to be a high school cadet. So again, had to do some creative documentation. But yeah, so I went into the high school cadets. And when I was in firefighter one in the summer classes, some of my instructors were, Joe McNeese, especially Tim Payne, Dino Pignataro, those guys. And Tim Payne was the lead instructor for the cadets that following year. So when I showed up, that's when he realized, oh, he was never 18. He had no idea I was a 16-year-old kid going through firefighter one. And
wow.
he's, yeah, and he
snuck by.
No, but it was allowed back then, but
Okay.
they treated us like we were adults, which was a shocking experience. And I would say that I had a really great group of guys in my cadet class. So they included guys like Steve Jones, Dave Polikoff, Dave Steckel. I think Ricky Bauer is still working. Chris German. This guy didn't become a career guy, but Billy Gregg, that everybody, from Up County will know, Smiling Billy Gregg. It was great. I had a blast, but we were coming up on graduation, and to be quite honest with you, I was still really hooked on the fire department. However, there was that family expectation of what to do. So I first graduated, and first thing I did back then, we had casual labor firefighters. So you could be hired on as like a paid on call firefighter.
Yeah, I remember that.
I think I worked for Cabin John when I first got out of high school, and I think we were getting paid $3.50 an hour. And then at the time, and there was always a pay difference. So like Kensington, the pay difference between Cabin John was like $5. So long story short, I ended up working for Kensington, and I tried to work during the day and go to school at night. Okay. So I'm thinking to myself, all right, this seems like a reasonable plan. And I specified plan. The reality is that, a couple things. The shy, timid kid was sort of going away, especially being around campus life, in college. So, and I don't know if anybody out there still remembers. I don't even know if the place still exists, but the VU College Park. Yeah, that was a frequented place.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of work, go to school, go to the VU, come back for 2 hours, go back to Kensington.
And you were a young man. You were a young man. You could do that stuff back in the day.
I was young, immature, stupid, you name it. But so, and you could go on forever for this, but so what had happened was is that I had made the decision that I was going to just go to school full time, and became a member of the College Park Fire Department. And and a couple of guys who ended up in Montgomery County as engineers, Matt Shabara and Ivan Hubbardson, were a couple of the guys who were the senior guys at College Park. And the intent was is that I was going to move into their bunk room while I went to school there. The fall before I was going to move into that following semester, my father was involved in a car accident. He was hit head on by a driver on the wrong side of the road, and he was severely injured. And it was one of these deals where we didn't know if he was going to live for a while. We didn't know if he was going to ever walk again, things like that. And it was, my mom was over there all the time. They had to close their shop, so it was one of these deals where I had to sort of step up and help the family. So I ended up working casual labor for the BCC Rescue Squad, and back then it was like, I don't know, $30 a day. And I'm sitting in front of our dining room table trying to figure out, all right, I've got I don't know, let's just pick a number, $100. I can pay $10 to the power bill. I can pay $10 to the gas bill. I can pay, $50 to the mortgage just to keep the debitors off her back.
Right.
But it was always a deficit. And I said, all right, I better do something. I better get a job. And so that's how I ended up in the fire department. I applied to a number of fire departments, DC, obviously in Montgomery County. I did apply to Los Angeles.
Oh, did you?
Number, yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
I wanted to be Roy DeSoto, man. So I did get hired by Montgomery County. So I went into recruit class 5, with some very, very, how should we just say, it's esteemed alumni like Tony Coleman, and so forth. I know you had him on.
Yeah, we did.
Like, yeah, he got us in trouble with Joe Valella so many times because he couldn't sync up his jumping jacks.
Wow. He had no coordination.
He had no coordination. It was God, and Joe got so mad.
Yeah, Joe was a PT instructor for a while there for a good little bit.
Right, and he was a Marine Corps drill instructor. So
yeah, he was.
You figure it out.
Vietnam vet.
So yeah, that's how it all started. Roundabout way, I ended up where I wanted to be, but family wise, I was still there. There was always that stigma in an Asian family that if you don't achieve being a doctor or an attorney or whatever, that you have failed. And that's a big stigma in the Asian community. There, as far as grades are concerned, there is no B in Asian. If you came home with like straight B's, you failed.
Right. It wasn't, our job wasn't. It was a blue collar job. It still mostly is, but it's considerably transitioned.
Yeah.
We weren't making a lot of money then. How much did you start off with? Did you remember?
21,000.
Yeah.
21,000. But but here's the deal: is that I did stick that into an inflation calculator, and the people starting now are starting off at less than an equivalent of what 21,000 would have been to
because of inflation
up to today.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's
So.
Gotcha.
All right. I'm sorry for dominating.
No. It's all about you. It's all about you. Yeah. It's all about
you. At what point? I know you said there was some creative paperwork going on, and your parents were dropping you off to the academy. So, like you said, they knew that you were going there. But tell us about when they finally figured out that, hey, our son is in the fire department and is doing the fire department. What was their reaction?
Well, you have to understand that they thought that this is still, a hobby while I was going to school. My dad goes into the hospital and I've got to support him. So I had a job. They think it's a temporary job. And I did joke with them. And I was like, when I did retire, I was like, hey, I'm done with my temporary job. But it was tough, because they may not have said it, okay, but I sort of felt the pressure of you're not living up to expectations, and
Right.
that was it dogged me for a number of years, and I tried to change that paradigm with my kids. I don't know if I succeeded or not, because you always want your kids to do well, but they all they knew was I was working. That's all. They didn't know that that there was a civil service career path.
Mhm.
It's you either owned a business or you were a doctor, lawyer, whatever.
Right. Pretty straightforward. It's typical immigrant story,
Yep.
especially in the Asian community. I've heard the story many times. A lot of people can
Yeah.
relate, man. All right, so you're in the county now. You did the academy. Where'd you go for probation? Your probationary period. Where were you at?
Oh, now let's make one thing clear to all those that are in the service now. There is a difference between Station 1 and one engine.
Ah,
Okay.
So
yeah.
I
Talk to us
went
about
to
that.
Well, I went to one engine on the A shift, and it was very different from what I knew. Yeah, College Park was a little bit run down because it was an old office building. But at BCC, you're in Bethesda, so you're pretty well supported in terms of money and so forth. So if you were short for something, you just went and bought it. Okay. One engine was very different in that it was if any firehouse that I had known in Montgomery County was homegrown, it was one engine. And, there was a lot of times where you would need to have work done on the station, and they didn't know if they were going to keep this station or not. For a number of years, they thought they were going to close it. So they didn't put any money into it. So anything we had to do, we did ourselves. And, I got to learn a lot of carpentry that way. So yeah, and it was. I remember Greg DeHaven was one of my recruit instructors, and we were talking about where we'd been assigned, and he thought I had hit the gold mine when I was assigned to one engine, and he
Yeah,
was
he
right.
comes from down there.
Yeah, he was right.
Yeah,
He was right.
he comes from down there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
what would you consider some of your, as you were coming up? Obviously, there's a lot of change there
Yeah.
through your rookie year, and the truth is, at that point when you were getting hired, there weren't that many Asian Americans applying for the job or even working on the job.
Yeah.
How was that like? I mean, you're one of the guys, so it's not a big change. But what was that like? Because it had to be a bit of a transition for those folks seeing you come into the station.
Well, by coincidence or not? Well, I mean, at BCC, it was. I don't think I noticed anything. Obviously, you had some issues with some older guys, and it's just the way it was.
Right.
Although, like when I went to Kensington, when I worked on Station 5, Sam Shue was assigned to 5.
Oh yeah.
So it was always, I thought that, it was always kind of amusing when they would put us on the ambulance together. So, but one thing my dad did, because my dad was a big civil rights person when he was going through school. And, he did the whole march with Dr. King during his speech, on the mall. He was in the crowd, not behind him.
Mm-hmm.
But, he would tell me what he had to go through, as a minority in that time period. And I looked at it from where I was working or, just existing. And I didn't suffer the same type of discrimination. Did I get some here and there? Yeah. But I never went into, there was no restaurant that said whites only or anything like that. So he told me to keep things in perspective. Your whatever journey I went on, and it was true in this respect, is not as arduous as the journey he went on. I mean, he was restricted from going to a number of different universities because he was a minority, and that was a shame. I don't know. I was different, and then there was a lot of times like when, like if I had gotten hired or was chosen for something, did I get whatever I got because of my own merit or because I was a minority? And a lot of
Right.
times that drove me to say, all right, if I'm chosen for this, then I'm going to be the best at it, so that there's no
Right.
there's no question.
Mm-hmm. Right. I
Yeah.
completely understand that. It's now our department is very diverse.
Yeah.
It has a lot of different. Basically it's a microcosm of society, especially in where we live in the DMV.
Yeah.
So it's you get a lot of that. So you're going through your career, and you're Station 1. You work in the Battalion 1. What was your best assignment that you think that you've had, and your least favorite assignment?
I looked at that question. I really had to think about this. And this is a cop-out answer. They were all great. I mean, seriously, they were all great. There were moments where they sucked. I went from one engine when we were running 20 calls a day. Then I went to 13 where we ran 2 calls a week.
Yeah.
And yeah, that part sucked. But did I love working with Bobby Hudson, Tracy Coleman, Tom Purdue? I'm missing people.
Yeah, I remember
Mike Owens, all those guys. Yeah, I enjoyed working. Oh, Fezenden. You always have to say Fezenden. But
the senior Fezenden, not the what, the Fezenden, the Battalion Chief Fezenden. You know what I'm talking about?
That's right. Yeah, Tom Fezenden.
Tom Fezenden. Yeah.
But everywhere I worked, it was you. And that's the one thing I would say is, like, no matter how much it sucks, wherever it is, just reach down, grab another gear, because you're going to be working with some great people. I don't care who they are.
Real quick, just a story just popped up, and I'm involved in this one. Just to be clear, I worked with Kang. I was a day worker at 13 when Bill was up there at working at Station 13, and there was an incident, and we're not going to confirm or deny that happened, where we're motivated to train. We're motivated to train. We're eager to train. And our captain at the time was Jay Zuspan. He hopefully will be a guest on this podcast one day.
Oh, I wasn't there. I know what you're talking about. I wasn't there.
Okay. You weren't there.
No.
I thought you were.
No, but I know what you're talking about. And we had a similar experience.
Experience, yeah, where hot wire cars and crash them up and.
Yeah, well, and also we cut up a car that the volunteers actually wanted to use to go back and forth to the academy.
Oh, whoops.
Whoops. All right. But no, I know what you're talking about. No, I work with Mike Owens and Tom Purdue. But yeah, I mean, I'll tell you this, every station I went to, every assignment, it didn't matter. It could be ECC, it could be headquarters, it could be 29 B and C shift, 1 A and C shift. Even when I was in a battalion car, 4 and 2, I loved it. The folks I worked with. That's what got me going, and I'd really love to hear what made people tick.
Who are your mentors? Who are people that help you? I mean, you have a whole bunch. I know you're going to say
there's so many.
I
think there's so many to name, but I think you have to start with the person at the very beginning, and that's Jim LeMay. Okay, so the Bub.
Yep.
He was hard on me, and I appreciate it because it set the stage for the rest of my career. To the point where he was hard on me a lot of different things. Like, for instance, he wouldn't sign my timesheet until I signed up for deferred comp.
There you go.
That's amazing.
And it was just like, I'm in my early 20s. I'm stupid. And, he knew that was very, very important. So he says, that's it, son. You either fill out this form and then I'll fill out, or it could have been an overtime form or whatever. But he basically bullied me into it. But, it sort of set that stage to go forward. The last supervisor I had, guys like Mike McAdams, Steve Laura, when I was in the battalion office, one person that had been in like almost my entire career at touch points. Greg DeHaven, he was my recruit class instructor. He was in the fire marshal's office working overtime at 13. We talked there. He helped me on different promotional exams. We were assigned together at one C shift, and he would give me advice about the master firefighter exam. God, it's just there's so many. We talked earlier before the podcast. It was really cool. Lenny Fitch was one of my mentors.
Yes.
Okay. I got to watch Monty come in as a high school cadet at 13. Eventually, he was a newly promoted lieutenant when I was at 29. We were on the USAR team together, and it was just cool to go through that experience and then see the two of them together at Monty's retirement party.
Mm-hmm.
Just crap like that. The other person who's really shaped, and these are people outside Montgomery County, but like Gary Breeze, he was executive director for the International Fire Chiefs. I worked part-time for him for a number of years, and he was a great influence on what I did. Tom Carr, we worked part-time together for a number of years. They give him, he had that red 7-Eleven cup. I was there when he bought it. we had just had lunch at 7-Eleven, at Subway, when we were working part-time, and he would always get a big gulp afterwards, for the afternoon. And he said, hey, look at this. If I buy this cup, then refills are only 50 cents. That's how the cup started. Even guys after I retired, Jack Brown, who was an assistant chief in Fairfax. Yeah, all these guys.
It's like almost takes a village to get.
It was more than a village. I felt very, very fortunate that you can go on and on. George Pitts, when I was a volunteer, it's just everywhere, and I was very, very fortunate.
Good.
Tim Payne, my lead instructor. Even when I was struggling with when my dad was ill. It's like, I would go over to 2 and just talk to him for a little bit. And he was like kind of a father figure at the time.
All right. So you're going through your career and you're bouncing between stations. Yeah. What was the thought process about getting promoted? And what was that like, that transition? We mentioned it on this podcast, on every person we had. What exactly was that? Because the transition's a big transition from Fire 3, doing what you want, to managing people and being kind of the lead. So what was that transition like for you? And what was it like for you to think about taking a promotion of that?
It was the process to think about taking a promotional exam. That was a non sequitur. I was just like, I was going to take the promotional exam, and I was going to, in my back to the whole Asian child trauma thing, I was going to ace it. And seriously, like when my results came out, and I can't remember how many I missed. I didn't. However many I got right, I didn't care about. I was pissed off about all the ones I got wrong. And so I had a lot of support. Again, I think I was working on one engine on the C shift, and when I made it known, hey, I want to get promoted, again, Greg DeHaven, Mike McCarty, they gave me the hands-on to experience what it's like being an officer. So, for example, I'd be assigned to Engine 11, and Mike would ride small line, and he would have me ride the seat. And I'm doing this as a Fire 3, and we all know the old District 1 days. You blink and you're fourth due from first due.
Yeah.
So
District 1, Battalion 1 now, but same region. Yeah.
No, but different place.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, I knew what I kind of wanted. So I didn't want to sit there and give any doubt about either my intent or my qualifications, and tried to absorb as much as I can. And there were guys who were very instrumental in that. Tommy Vane was the master there. Dave Stambaugh and Marshall Hauser were a couple of the senior threes. And even, and Bill Lucas, he was also the other master there. So, you just learn from everybody you can. And when I got into the exam, it was just like, it was to a certain degree at the time, I was very young. It was, it's a terrifying thing to go through your first assessment center.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah, you feel overwhelmed a little bit. Yeah. So you're promoted.
Uh-huh.
Where do you go, and how was that like?
Well, the way this worked out, so I was going from C shift to A shift. So my first promotion was from Fire 3 to Master Firefighter. I was going to 10A. And the way this worked out, I had some leave, and then they had to adjust my shifts. So I didn't actually get to Station 10 for like 10 days after my last shift at 1. And apparently in that interim, I was promoted to, back then it was sergeant. I was promoted to sergeant, but apparently they forgot to call me. So I reported to Station 10, and I get this call from Peter Barnes wondering if I wanted to swap. I was like, and at the time he was working at 26, and I was like, oh, okay. And he says, no, I mean swap positions. So, well, let me get back to you on this. Well, he already knew that I was promoted and I was leaving, but I didn't.
Oh wow! So he wanted to get into 10 before, yeah.
Yeah, so it's my first shift there. PT's over, so you get into your blues, and I get into my uniform shirt, and one of the guys said, "You're wearing the wrong shirt." So, it's the uniform shirt with the red patch on it, and they told me, "Yeah, you got promoted." I was like, "No, I didn't."
That was before emails, before emails and everything else.
Yeah, you had to do it by phone call. So this goes on for like an hour, and then they show me the goldenrod personnel action. It says, "Oh yeah, you're promoted." It's like, "Oh damn it!"
Not bad, huh?
Yeah, so I was at Station 10 for about 2 weeks, and then I was transferred to Station 3 on day work.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was. And at the time, they were short uniforms. So they didn't have any white shirts. I had to wear, they gave me sergeant's collar brass, but I still had the blues.
Yeah,
we all wear blues now. Everybody wears.
Yeah, and it came full circle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what was it like down at 3?
It's crazy. That was the first place where I had this big dichotomy between day workers and shift workers. So, for the day workers, you had your own personality, but then, the shift workers, you had your personality of the day. So, and they were very different. I was new. Billy Richards he also came to Station 3. He was new. Had a lot of young firefighters. Had Kim Boswell, Tim Brown, Brett Livingston. Larry Snyder was the first master firefighter, and Adam Jones. And, I was new, and they didn't have like OCS or anything like that. So I really had to go off of guidance from what people had told me. And, at the times, Richie Bowers was the station commander, and he said, he gave me some words of wisdom that I really did carry to the end of my career. Believe in your people and give them the benefit of the doubt. It really did carry through, and it was. Did it suck to be on day work? Yeah, but did we have a good time? We ran some really good calls. Yeah. I mean, this is back when we had the written reports, and you would get those rainy days, and you're in a squad chasing these nothing wrecks. So we get back to the station, and I would stack like 6 reports with all the carbon paper, and just press hard on the back, so I only had to fill the back out one time, and then all I had to do was change the front.
Yeah, way before paper reports.
So you're at 3. You do the day work thing for a little while, and you're a sergeant at this point, right?
Yep.
Okay. And sergeant is the equivalent to what, our lieutenant now?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it could be a story for another time, but at the time, I had also received the same week I got promoted and was transferred to 3. I'd gotten a job officer to be an agent with the DEA.
Oh, you applied to the DEA. Wow.
Yeah, but that was like, I had applied a while back, and then they went through a hiring freeze. So it's like 2 years later. And at the time, when I applied, I was single and unattached. When they opened up the hiring again, I'm married and my first child's on the way. So I was like, and they definitely told me I was either going to go to New York or San Francisco. And I was like, I think I'll stay here. And then a week later, we were deployed to Oklahoma City.
Yes. So that's an interesting story, right? Oklahoma City for the
murder bombing.
Yeah, the murder bombing at the office building.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically the creation of our modern day beginning creation of the FEMA. Would you would say, or how would you describe that?
I would say it was the not the beginning, but the subtle maturation. But yeah, it was, and by this time I'd been riding apparatus for a number of years, since the mid '80s to this point, and nothing I did was able to prepare me for what we were going to see over at the Murrah building, and it was fairly horrific. It was fairly horrific, and we had a guy named Mike Murphy who was casual labor at Rockville, and he left Montgomery County and went to be a supervisor, an EMS supervisor in Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. So we did finally catch up with him in Oklahoma City, but in years later, it was rough for him.
Yeah, I can imagine. Coming back from Oklahoma City and all that you experienced there, so you were already a part of the search and rescue team at that point, right?
Collapse rescue is what they used to call it.
Yeah. How did things change for you or for the team after coming back from there? Did anything significant change?
I would say for the first couple of weeks that we were home and back on the floor, you would go out in calls, and you get beeped out for a personal injury with one pin. You're going to get hyped up. Okay. I would say for the first couple of weeks, it didn't, if that makes sense. Okay. And I remember talking to a couple of guys about it, and says, it's just like, it's, I don't want to say ordinary, but it's just, it's, your pulse isn't, there's no elevation in your pulse there. So did it subside? Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite a it was, I think it was in my opinion, because I was a very young firefighter at the time, it was another transitional moment for fire services across the country. I think the way we were viewed, what our mission had drastically changed after Oklahoma City. I think we started to now open more of what we do. I want to say we were kind of just in a box of what we did. That's not what I'm saying, but it started to become what you see now, the all hazard fire rescue service. That was probably the beginnings. You can see small beginnings before, because you have to be in for a while and kind of pay attention to it. But if you can see, that was like, there's a line where it starts, and Oklahoma City was one of those marks. So you say, okay, this was one of the catalyst for us moving forward as being an all-service fire department.
Yeah, and even back then, I don't remember if it was Frank Renatus or John Grover who was a director at the time. I said, listen, we are an EMS department. And, there was a lot of, how should we say, pushback that, and especially from a position of tradition that says, no, we're not. We're a fire department. But, they were ahead of their time. And you can see it today where, we know that the majority of what we do is EMS.
Absolutely.
So now you're back and you transition back into your regular duties back here at home, and eventually you promote to battalion chief.
Yep.
So tell us about life as battalion chief. How was that?
It was a little weird because you go from, obviously you're part of a crew to you're by yourself. Okay. And, the expectation is that, you go on station rounds and, you need to be, certainly you need to be detached to a certain degree because otherwise, why do you have captains? Captains run the house. Okay. And I used to tell people, I was like, realistically, my job duties are not terribly different than a regional manager of a bunch of Target stores. But and I missed that working with the folks. And by that time I had ridden fill-in for a number of battalion chiefs, whether it was Battalion 5 or 3 or wherever, that I felt fairly competent in terms of the command aspects of the job. But it was the other parts, like you deal with the personnel issues, you deal with whatever. But I think at that point, I decided I was going to make a conscious effort that I'm going to know who's in my battalions and know their stories, as opposed to the guy who just rolls in, says hi, drops off the mail, back when we did that, and rolls out. And I'd, if I can leave anybody with a legacy, it's like, hey, you know what? Take value in the personal relationships that you make and, the interactions that you have as human beings, as opposed to the mechanics of your SOPs.
Yeah.
It was, and I like this. I, for the most part, I enjoyed everybody I worked with.
Yeah, that's one of those things that, the battalion chief is usually involved in administrative things like disciplinary action and stuff. And it needs to be positive, and you want to have that positive impact on people because there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, the battalion chief just sometimes is not by their own doing. It's just the nature of the job, right? That it's just you're there when something goes wrong. You gotta, you're there.
Well, and and Dickie Mullins did tell me years ago, back when we did the first district chief training, it was like, you have to be the heavy. That's the bottom line. You have to be the heavy. And, it also goes down to every supervisor there is, that there is a time when you have to be the heavy. It doesn't mean that you have to be cold, callous, and, sit in your office and not do anything, or, not interact. But
yeah, there comes a time where you got to be the boss.
Yeah.
Oh, no doubt.
Mm-hmm. And hearing what you said about wanting to know people's stories, that doesn't surprise me based upon everything that you said, because you've listed off so many names of people that have been instrumental to you, you remember, that have made an impact to you. Like it's very obvious that the relationships that you formed during your career have made the difference for your career?
Yeah, Scott Graham has a great line, and it resonates true, is that I miss the clowns, but I don't miss the circus.
That is a good line.
Yeah, that's
line.
good.
Yeah.
And we did have some clowns. I mean, so.
Right.
Yeah. Fire service is no shortage of clowns. Present company included. So
yeah, no doubt. No doubt. So you're coming to the end of your career.
Mm-hmm.
I know you this part's always difficult for people because they have to make a decision on whether to stay or to leave. I know you left and you retired without getting into our deferred retirement option plan, which is basically our drop program.
Right.
Which is like everybody does that, but you obviously, it's because you had other plans and other things you were going to do. What was that like thinking about retirement, and what made you decide to finally make that move?
Well, I actually said to myself, this is like in my 15th year, let me map out, and this is before the 20-year retirement was passed. Let me map out my next 10 years. Okay. And what I did is that I sort of sketched out this plan in like, I used to use like those stupid composition books that you got in elementary school. So I used to, I would sketch out, it's like, all right, if I'm going to be at my 25th year, I'm going to be this age. What is my employability at that age for, a salary that would be commensurate to what I would like? Okay. And I started to do a lot of planning in terms of, all right, so then what are the qualifications that I had that I could transfer to whatever other job was next? And what I did was, at 15 years, I would just go on job interviews without the intent of actually taking the job, just to get the practice to go interview. Okay. So I didn't want to get to retirement and have this big demarcation point and then have to jump into something without any practice. So, that's what I sort of did. When they passed the contract where we went to 20-year retirement, that just accelerated things. And then I started, just looking at positions and applying. A lot of this was trial and error. And then everything sort of fell into place. And then I accepted a job at FEMA. And, a friend of mine, said, hey, what about the drop? I was like, what about it? If I take a job that I'm getting the same salary that I am now, then I can make my own drop.
Okay.
So
is that what you ended up doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's, and sometimes there's a lot of luck that involves there, and sometimes you have to be in the right place at the right time. Just to give you an idea, even today, and I still work for the federal government, but, I do a moderate amount of hiring, and it's not unusual to get like 900 applications for one vacancy. So that's why sometimes you have to have some luck. So, but it was very calculated, and I was because I knew that if I retired, maxing out the pension formula, that my employability at that age might be diminished. Okay. But I also did not see myself, staying 40 some odd years, because at the same time, I didn't want to become irrelevant. Skills irrelevant. I'll leave it at that. So that's how 20 years rolled around.
Okay, real quick before we go on to some of the stuff, were you there? Did you go down to the Pentagon?
Yes.
Okay. So you
Yeah.
went down also to the Pentagon during 9/11.
Yep. Pentagon for 9/11, Katrina after that. It was, after that, I was on a number of deployments to the time I retired. And and then I did go to FEMA and then ended up on retirement on the other side, or deployment on the other side. So
Gotcha.
Cool. That's good. That's good. I guess you had a lot of deployments, man. People only wish to get that many deployments. Some of them are dying to get deployed out, and it's kind of hard to go to be there at the right time to get deployed.
yeah, I mean, but there's
Things
a
got to go
cost.
wrong.
Yeah, I mean, there is a cost to that. Like 1 year, I think it was 2004. They had a hurricane deployment, and I said I would accept the mission. I told my wife, I was like, it's a hurricane. I'll be out and back in like 3 days. Okay. It was an election year, and they kept us on the road for over a month. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Sorry, honey.
Oh, yeah.
Man. So since you retired from here and you pretty much started working with FEMA right away, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But what were you doing with FEMA?
For a short period of time, I worked in the Suburni branch, the chemical, radiological, biological, nuclear, and explosive branch. And then 6 months later, I was transferred to the urban search and rescue branch. So I was in the parent office for the entire system.
Okay. So some hazmat, like weapons of mass destruction type things.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Now, did you find it hard transitioning out of the fire service into, I mean, I know that it's not exactly the fire service, but it's still emergency services. So was that a hard transition?
Yes and no. Easy in that I was also working with a lot of other retired firefighters. Hard in that, again, you miss that clown time. You're around the kitchen table, or even doing something as stupid as PTing together or something like that. And like at Station 29, we would do the deck of cards. Okay, shh, don't tell anybody. But we would tell Mike Lowry we were doing the deck of cards, but it was a pinochle deck.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah, it's just those are the times that you just you take for granted. In retrospect, you take for granted, but you really miss them.
Yeah. Especially when, like you did, you made relationships center, and it sounds like you've always valued having those people in your life. So I can understand that.
Yeah.
So now, because you mentioned before we started recording, you retired in 2011, right?
Yep.
So it's been a good little bit of time since you stepped away from the fire service. So what is your, like, what's your daily routine like? Like what is your life looking like now?
Well, so I work for the FCC now. We chase down 911 outages through the country, but it's been a lot different since COVID. So I do go downtown to our headquarters office, but it's about once a week. But other than that, I get up, I go downstairs to my home office, log in and stuff like that. And most of my team is remote. The closest member of my team is in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Other than that, I've got 2 guys in Jersey, 1 guy in Austin. So there is a significant amount of isolation, but at the same time, the office culture is that that people were in their offices with their doors closed. So it was like, what difference does that make?
Yeah, not much difference.
Yeah. But I mean, not commuting in and out of DC has been a plus.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's its own issues onto itself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt about it.
So now, as we're as we're getting ready to wrap things up, looking back on your career in the fire service, 21 years, what would you say was, I know you said you enjoyed every part of it, but what would you say stands out to you the most? Like when you think about your career, like if you could sum it up in just a few words, how would you sum it up?
Oh, the clowns. The clowns.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the deal. It's like, and my son is in the fire department now too. And I've told him this is that, experience as much as you can. You'll make relationships in this job that you would not otherwise do in any other job. And for a lot of people, they're for life. So be part of that community and also be a good member of that community as well. Yeah, I mean, clowns.
So looking back, I mean, just a couple of things. What would you say to your younger version of yourself if you could sit down with him right now as he's coming in? What would you recommend him? What would you tell him?
Well, it's centric to me, and I would tell him that, yeah, you know what, you're good enough at what you do. You don't have to keep proving something to yourself over and over again when it's not necessary. Okay, so yeah, I would tell people, I would tell myself, it was like, do the best you can, but give yourself some grace.
Well said.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's very good advice.
Yep. So what brings you joy now? I mean, you're retired, you've had a couple of jobs, you've transitioned, your kids are now adults. You've transitioned completely out of the fire service now. I mean, not technically, but emergency services for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a life member at BCC, which just gives me bathroom privileges, to be quite honest with you. But I think the big things that give me joy nowadays are my family. My wife was really tolerant of me for many years of excessive time that I dedicated to the job that I probably should have balanced better and paid more attention to us. And probably same with my kids in the early years. And the things I get joy out of are them, just spending time with them, even though my daughter's on the West Coast. But, and, with my son being in the fire department now, it's just I don't want to say reinvigorated, but just like I pay attention to more fire department things than I did for a while. I retired and still kept playing hockey. You got to keep active. You definitely have to keep active. So yeah, those are the things.
Nice.
Sounds good, man.
Yeah.
Keeping up with the clowns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say to the firefighter who just got in the drop or is getting ready to retire? What would be your advice to him or her?
Plan for afterwards now. Because, I mean, let's face some realities. There's a particular personality set for firefighters, and one of them generally is that you're not idle. Okay, so I hear a lot of times I ask, hey, what are you going to do afterwards? And the first thing he says, not a thing. And I was like, hey, that's nice. Okay, so after the first month, how's that going to go?
Right.
So I would say, and it doesn't matter. You don't have to get another job, just something, because we know that if you sort of let your mental elasticity go, it's not good for you.
Sense of purpose, I think, is a big one we've heard over and over again. A sense of purpose, and once, because our personality types, you're correct. We have a sense of purpose. We're driven like that. We can easily function in that environment. Yeah. But for you, and I don't know if you heard this, and we tell it to people on this podcast a lot. I know the pressure you had growing up, parental pressure. I have some of it too. People understand that. That's a real deal, and more people can understand than you will believe. But man, you did good, man. You had a real good career, and you affected a lot of people in a positive way, man. Good job.
Well, thank you. And this is a subject for somebody else's podcast, but in my estimation, I think that the marker of achievement in education in our society is broken. It's if you think about it, they're making one linear route towards success, and it's not necessarily the same route.
Right.
Yeah. There are many roads to success, however you define success.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So one last question for you. So now when you get up, get out of bed, go to the bathroom and start getting ready for the day, and you look yourself in the mirror, how do you feel about the guy looking back at you?
I look at him and say, man, you're old. What the hell happened to you? I would say you did okay. You did okay. Was it perfect? No. If anybody says their life was perfect, they didn't make any mistakes, is lying.
Yeah, no such thing.
Yeah, there's no such thing. I think I said I did okay, and I tell everybody this: so just do better, one thing better every day.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be everything. Just do one thing. Put the toilet seat down on the in the bathroom or something.
Yeah, let's 1% better every day.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, again, we really appreciate you being on the show with us. Thank you very much for.
I tell you what, I appreciate you guys. This is something that's sorely needed. I know there are plenty of podcasts to talk about leadership, command, fire department stuff, and you guys are tops. I miss you.
Thank you very much, man.
Yeah,
thank you very much, man. Appreciate it and enjoy your support. Yeah.
Yeah. And if people wanted to get in touch with you after this, how can they get in touch with you?
One thing is, you can send me an email at kangw77@gmail.com. That's it. I was going to give you some, wise remark, but I can't think of something right now.
That's all right. Email works just fine.
That's good.
Well, Battalion Chief Bill Kang, retired Battalion Chief Bill Kang, thank you very much for being on the show with us. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you guys. And
thank you, Bill.
Look forward to your continued success.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care, brother. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the When the Smoke Clears podcast. If you want to get in touch with us, you can find us on Instagram at When the Smoke Clears podcast, or you can email us at whenthesmokeclears8@gmail.com. That's whenthesmokeclears and the number 8 @gmail.com.